That last episode of Nitro was, for me, it was kind of like a big relief that all this was going to end.
Here with Dirk Manning and Tony Schiavone. How are you guys?
Great, Kevin. We're fine. I'm speaking for myself. I don't know how Dirk is. Dirk is always okay, fine. How you doing, Dirk?
I average a good 7 out of 10 when I'm with Tony. Usually I'm like a 9.8. Talking to Tony, usually I drop
I
about
drag him down at times.
No, things are wonderful. Thank you for having us.
Over the course of the years, you worked with a ton of different announcers at the table.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask is, which are the ones that you had the most fun working with?
Well, I really had a blast with Heenan. And I did because Heenan entertained us on the air and entertained us away from the arena because we traveled together, announcers, and we're really not doing this now. But back in the day, we used to do a Nitro. We used to do like a pay-per-view on a Sunday, and a Nitro on a Monday, and then we would do a Thunder, and we would drive. And so I would be with all these guys, and Heenan was so enjoyable to be with because he made it his point to entertain us, again, to make us laugh. He loved making people laugh. I really loved working with Dusty Rhodes, who we just honored his passing away recently, this past month. And I just, because he was so funny. Jesse, I really loved because to me, being able to work with Jesse Ventura was like a big freaking deal. I mean, we're talking about, I watched Saturday night's Main Event, and being able to say that you work with Jesse Ventura was a big deal. But I really think the guy that I've often enjoyed working with more than any, probably because I work with him longer than any, has been JR.
Mhm.
JR is a funny son of a gun, man. He is hilarious. And he and I worked together back when everything was serious and we were playing it both serious. And now we're working together when when we can have a little bit more fun than we used to have. So I think of all the people I've worked with, I've had the most fun with JR.
It reminds me, Dirk, did you happen to tell Tony the story about my daughter that I emailed you about?
No, I wanted to save that to come from your lips. I didn't want to.
All right. So I wanted to tell you this. So I was doing some research on your career, Tony,
Yeah.
the last couple of days, and the name of the pay-per-view escapes me. You were working with Jesse, this will remind me of it, and you were wearing a tuxedo.
Okay.
And my daughter comes walking in the room. She's looking at the TV and she goes, "Who's that?" And so I start with you and say, "Oh, well, he's a wrestling announcer. He was a wrestling announcer when I was a kid, so he's really well known." My daughter just stops for a minute and goes, "Hi, Tony," and then just walks out of the room. So you have a new
All
fan.
children love Tony Schiavone.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
They don't know better. That's why.
Yeah.
To point out, she's 5 years old. So,
There you go.
all right. Just a couple more.
Okay.
So what was the atmosphere like back during when, especially like during that last episode of Nitro when WWE was taking over? What was it like in the company?
Okay. So that last episode of Nitro was, for me, it was kind of like a big relief that all this was going to end. I know for some people backstage, especially for some of the girls that worked backstage, there were some girls back there that worked in PR and worked in production. I remember they were crying. I remember when I walked through the curtain, it was over, and the WWF took over the half of Nitro. They were crying. I wasn't crying. I got in my car and took off.
Yeah.
It was like a big relief. And there was a certain concern because I didn't know exactly what I would do next. I didn't know if I would be working for the WWE. So, but there was a certain excitement too, because as you'll find out in the book, Lois explained to me how important it was for WCW to finally end. for me, and it was important.
I'm looking forward to reading that part too.
Yeah.
By the way,
and-
let you guys know, I am a Kickstarter pledger.
Oh, thank you,
So
Kevin.
I will be getting the hardcover.
Very
So,
good.
Not to interrupt, but I just wanted to let you guys know that. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're going to get a big box of Tony.
Yeah.
Dirk, I guess. But,
So it was just I was that night I was not upset. I was not upset. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I guess I was relieved. And I drove from Panama City all the way to Atlanta that night, overnight by myself, alone in my thoughts, which is what I usually like to do anyway. I like to drive. I like to be alone in my thoughts. It was not a terrible time. And then of course it was the great unknown. And are we going to be, all of us, going to work for the WWE? And I had a feeling we weren't. And then of course that following week, it may have been the next day. It wasn't the next day. Maybe it was 2 days later. Then they brought us all in and told us to hit the bricks. So I didn't know. And then after that, I knew that, I had to do something, but it was all right. But leading up to that time, it wasn't good at all. It was, you would try to do your job, and you would try to work hard, and you would try to put out the best product that you knew. But every time you go backstage, all they want to talk about is this going to be our last show? Are we going to be bought by Vince? Are we still going to be on TBS? Is so-and-so going to do the job tonight? It's just so much freaking drama. And it wasn't a good place to work. It was a terrible place to work. Everybody was on edge. Everybody was unhappy. Ratings were going down. It was lack of leadership there at the end. It really was lack of leadership. Leadership that, man, we really got in place now with AEW, but we didn't have back then.
Yeah, that chapter in the book was really interesting to write and to see illustrated as well, talking about that, because it's kind of, like I said, the book is not a dirt sheet. The book is about Tony's life in wrestling. But when you get to that part of his career, it gets a little dark. It gets a little heavy for a minute there. Now, obviously, we know the story turns out wonderfully with Tony at AEW and things like that. But yeah, that's all captured in the book, which people can pre-order now at www.buttsandseatscomic.com.
Please check it out. One last question for you, Tony. I know you guys have another appointment after this. So,
Sure.
Which actually is funny because one of my coworkers, when I told them I was interviewing you guys, they said, it's getting really close to the end. Make sure Tony says, folks, we're desperately out of time.
I'll be glad to. Absolutely.
But the final question I had, actually wasn't for me. It was from one of my coworkers. He said, so did all the wrestlers hate Jim Herd, or was it just Jim Cornette?
I don't know if hate is the right word. I think Cornette hated him. I know Ric Flair didn't like him, and that's the reason Ric Flair left. Jim Herd liked to rule by chaos. He liked to run a company by getting people angry at each other. The perfect example is, and this is not in the book, and JR has mentioned this many times, was Eric Bischoff, who eventually ran the company and did a hell of a job running the company, was brought in by Jim Herd as the third announcer. Jim Ross was doing Saturday night. I was doing Worldwide, one of the syndicated shows. This is after my WWE experience. And so they brought in another announcer to do NWA Pro. I think they had Bob Caudle doing it at that time, or maybe Lance Russell, somebody. They brought in Eric Bischoff in the AWA. And this was a very important move in Eric's career because Eric was really struggling making ends meet with the AWA. So they brought him in. And do you know why they brought Eric Bischoff in? Not necessarily be the third announcer, because Eric was so good looking and looked so good on TV, Jim Herd wanted to piss me and JR off. That's why he brought him in. And that's how he ran a company. He ran a company by just pitting people against each other and pissing people off. And he pissed off a lot of wrestlers. Ric Flair left our company, took the world title belt to the WWE because of Jim Herd. And so Cornette really hated him. And a lot of people disliked him. I didn't have a problem with him because I tried to avoid him. I didn't want to get caught in all that drama. So
Goddamn ding dongs. So
Ding
You know
dongs.
what? That is one of the first matches I ever remember watching as a kid involved the Ding Dongs.
Wow.
I know. I can't even remember. I'm sure it was a enhancement talent or
Yeah.
I vividly remember those two coming down the aisle with their bells.
they have a
Right.
cameo in the book. That's all I'm going to say.
And then years later, reading in different books about what they were supposed to be.
Right.
Facts,
Yeah.
You know, it's made me laugh even more.
Right.
You know, guys, we only have a couple minutes. I don't want to keep you,
Okay.
but thank you so much for talking to me. If you want to bring up just the website, people can go and pre-order the book, and please pre-order it. I'm looking forward to it. It's buttsandseats.com.
Buttsandseatscomic.com. Yeah, buttsandseats.com will take you to a nightclub. Yeah, Butts and Seats Comic. It will. That's the first thing I checked.
Okay.
But buttsandseatscomic.com will take you to the comic book. There's still a limited amount of time you can pre-order. We appreciate people like you backing the Kickstarter. You're going to get all that extra bonus swag, but people can still get the book directly from the publisher through buttsandseatscomic.com. Pre-order it, and they will get it before it hits bookstores and comic book shops nationwide later this fall.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'm not going to keep you. Tony, if you would.
Thanks for being with us this week. We can't stay. We're desperately out of time. We got to go. It's wild.